All right, welcome to an edition of Cwic Week, where we are going to wrap up some of the content and events of this last week with Cwic Media. A lot went on this last week. I had a very full, productive week. Not a lot on the content side as much, but between a visit to Salt Lake and Provo and BYU and, of course, General Conference over the weekend, it was a very full week for me. I wanted to go over a few of the things that have happened. First of all, I want to go back to the episode that we did last week on the BYU professor, Professor Bybee, and the slander that he kind of went over with me, right, when he backhanded me in his very, very popular Twitter thread. I want to clarify a couple of things on this. Number one, when you see someone you are battling with ideas, and they go to the term harassment, they're saying that they're being harassed or their colleagues are being harassed, please investigate that a little bit in terms of what is the harassment? Is it really harassment? Because that can be broadened out in its definition quite a bit. Exposure and transparency is not harassment. And I have never harassed anyone on the campus of BYU or anyone that I know of, period. And as most of you know, I'm very careful about guarding the names. I rarely put that out there unless it's already very public. And almost all of the information that is given to me, almost all of it, is public already. And so that's an important thing to understand. But the harassment issue is just a way of saying, look, I'm a victim. As they go out and challenge and slander and lie, quite frankly, about their positions and about others with ad hominem attacks. Let's stick to the substance, right? Let's stick to the substance. There's nothing wrong with allowing parents and students to know what may or may not be taught at BYU and what they might be entering into. I mean, the university experience is becoming very, very different than it was 15, 20 years ago. And this religion of academia with critical social justice is a very big part of that. And it seeps in pretty strongly to BYU with certain professors that are heavily converted to this type of thing. You can look at their backgrounds. It's not hard. You can go back and look at several of their backgrounds. Where did they study? Who were their mentors? What did they study? And then look for their words and what they're saying. This is not completely pervasive at BYU yet at this time. BYU is probably one of the safer places in terms of avoiding this type of an ideology. But there are certain professors where you're going to get, more than teaspoons full of this. It's going to be a constant part of their pedagogy and their teaching. And it's going to... for some, it's going to make a difference for them. It's going to affect them, and they're going to be given a different worldview than they were probably brought up with. And I believe that those professors know that. They know it. They think they're more in the right than the parents are, and they're going to, ease these students out of the nest, so to speak. And you should be aware of that. Overall, however, I want to and then the other thing is the bubble, right? You've got even with a lot of the professors that are at BYU that are converted to this critical social justice ideology, their background isn't BYU necessarily, right? They come out of other esteemed programs where it has been basically you're in a bubble. This is how you are taught. This is especially in the humanities, and you're submerged in this. And so when you come out of it not with just a different worldview, but with a praxis. And that means that a level of activism. And a big part of that activism is converting others. It just is. How do I get others to see this other worldview? And then that becomes part of what they call their pedagogy. This is, in a broad brush, you could say it's their teaching style. If you see professors using the term pedagogy quite a bit, you need to be a little bit suspect, because where pedagogy is very broadly how things are taught, it's critical pedagogy. And they usually leave out the critical at the beginning with a capital C, so to speak. It's critical pedagogy that you need to watch out for. And that is something where it is an indoctrination type of a process. That sounds to some people probably conspiratorial. It's not. I've studied all of these things. I've studied those that teach this type of pedagogy. And so it's you can when you do that, you can recognize this. You're aware of these things as they pop up. But I want to be clear also, I love BYU. I love BYU. I went to BYU. My wife went to BYU. All 4 of my kids have been to BYU. And my parents met at BYU. My dad was one of the founders of the Cougar Club, right? We've had season tickets, football tickets in the family since the season was renovated. What was that, 81, 83? I can't remember. It's, I bleed blue. I bleed blue. But that's why I do it. That's one of the reasons why I do it. It's because I do care about BYU. But the more 2 other important things on that are really important on why I would do these things at BYU and bring these things out in transparency and give a little sunlight to them at BYU. Number 1 is for the kids, because I get so many letters that and contact information from parents that are like, what in the world just happened? What just happened with my kid? They're not the same. They're criticizing us. And look, anybody who goes out into the independent world and is trying to become an adult, there's going to be adjustments, of course. This is different. This is different. Who is this that came home for Thanksgiving? Who is this that came home for Christmas? What language are they using here? That's what you need to look for, and it's there. It's happening. And so I have a concern over that. And in a lot of ways, this type of ideology, it's not that it's leaning left. That's not an issue. It's that it is illiberal. It is beyond anything that is leaning left. So if you are conservative and you're worried about liberal professors, don't worry about liberal professors. Liberal professors, you need them in a university. That's an important part of growing and learning when I was at BYU. That's not the issue. And besides that, there are probably many, many more conservative professors at BYU than there are liberal professors. It's what you get beyond that when you're hitting hard left. That's the difference, because you're moving from liberal to illiberal, and you're going into a new worldview here. You're not opening things up for discussion. We're not talking about classical liberalism anymore. In fact, we're talking about those that fight against it. So that is one of the major issues that I have and that I have a concern with. The second thing is the church itself. If you look out at the parallel of anywhere else in the United States, for example, culture is coming out of the academy. It's not media. It's not the news. It's not any of these other places anymore. It's not religion for most anymore. It's coming out of the academy. And so where it happens elsewhere, it's likely going to happen here. And so if we allow this to foment and to grow into something that is more and more concerning, and as it becomes more pervasive and unchecked, then where does that lead going into the church? And it's not like I'm worried about the brethren or the top leadership. I'm not worried about anything like that. I mean, who am I to look at that? What I am worried about is the culture of the church. And I'm worried about the pulpit, right, being used in your ward house as basically as a bully, anti-racist bully pulpit. And going into young women's and having young women's advisors teaching the young girls about Ibram Kendi and about compassion being used without spirit and without reason. And, again, you should see some of the things I get from people that just experienced this last week or last month or in the last year in their wards. It's concerning. It's scary. And so we need to get out ahead of that and put some sunlight on that. I think that's a smart thing to do. Now, I also had a visit to BYU, which was fabulous. Actually, well beyond BYU, but went to Utah, went to Provo and Utah County and up into Salt Lake. And the visit at BYU was very fruitful. I know several of you wanted to know a little bit more about what happened there, how that went. I got there, I went to the Cougar Eat, which I hadn't been to in, I don't know how long, 20 years, 30 years, and got some food. I was sitting down and ran into a bunch of religion professors that were there that happened to recognize me. And so that was great. And I got to talk to them just a little bit. How I would absolutely love to have them sit down and just spend hours with me going over their areas of specialty and talking about those things. You guys know how I love that, right? I just eat that stuff up. In particular, Joseph Spencer was there. And if you don't know who Joseph Spencer is, you should. Joseph Spencer is mostly a Book of Mormon scholar and one of my favorite scholars. I don't know him real well, but I got to meet him and talk to him just a little bit. I'm reading one of his books right now with a group that I do study with. And now, if you have not had experience reading and studying the gospel a little bit, this might be a little bit beyond what you want to start with and go to. But if you have, I would highly recommend you read Joseph Spencer and his books. Start off with An Other Testament. That's An Other Testament, which is about the Book of Mormon. Another one is A Vision for All, which is a number of essays that are on the Book of Mormon. You're going to get a whole new world of vision of the Book of Mormon through a lot through Isaiah. And so, if you're worried, you've always been worried about coming up to those Isaiah chapters, and once you get a clear understanding of what he's gone through and understanding how this text, the Book of Mormon text, is wrapped around Isaiah, it's fascinating. It's really good stuff. So that was really fun for me to be able to do, and I appreciate them coming up and saying something to me. I also had a meeting with students, with some really sharp students. This was those that are all the way from freshmen up to, older returned missionaries who are married and have kids. And that was really great. Really good feedback from them in understanding some of the situations that they come up with. There is an opportunity perhaps there for some organization that we are going to pursue, and at least explore in maybe putting something together there. Something that is not reactionary, right? You don't want some anti-CRT club or something like that, but something that is positive and ideal for attracting students with a positive message about becoming one, right? And gathering Israel, so to speak, and something that is a last thing in the world you want is some type of a reactionary type of a group. Nobody wants that. That's not what it's about. But great meeting with them, and I appreciate them spending the time with me and getting to know them, and I hope to get to know them all a lot more. I also met with faculty. I'm not going to go much over that, but I do have members of the faculty that I am in contact with there at BYU. Some are at all different levels, and they are, there's some that just want to talk these things out and hash these things out as far as, critical social justice entering into BYU. What are the dynamics? What are the work dynamics? What are the interaction dynamics of actually working with other faculty? There are issues there. There are issues. This is spreading. And so that was good to be able to spend some time with them, and I'm sure that's something that I will be doing more in the future. And any help that I can give them in terms of education or what I get from other places, I'm working a little bit with ASU right now, I want to share with them and talk with them. So that was nice. I also had a chance to meet with an influencer. I'm not going to say who it was yet. I say an influencer. I don't know if that's a very good name, but someone who who has a very, very popular podcast. And spent some time with him, talking with him, really enjoyed meeting with him. And I'll follow up with that once that interview, he ended up interviewing me. And so once that interview is out, then I'll follow up and summarize with that a little bit more. But I don't want to put that out there before the interview gets out. And then lastly, well, not lastly, but then I also met with some ex-Mormons. And so that was kind of nice. It's funny how when you get a really hard ideology that enters anywhere, right? This can be going into, let's say, political parties, the Democrat Party, the Republican Party. Your demographics are going to shift because it is hardcore and it's going to turn a number of people off. This is why I keep telling a number of you that lean right, don't confuse all of the classical liberals, anyone leaning on the left, with critical social justice. That's the wrong thing to do. This is not a Hannity versus Maddow thing, right? That is old school. That is not the world we are living in anymore. It might still get a lot of views on TV. That's not the world we live in anymore. And so the dynamics are changing drastically. Trump helped change a lot of that, right? Those that were completely against him, that could have been in the Republican Party, shifted over, and many of them vote Democrat and still vote Democrat now, and the other way around, right? You have many people who were so sick of identity politics on the left that would never have voted Republican that actually voted for Trump. So you have this shift, and labor, right? Labor moved to Trump in pretty high numbers. And so it's the same thing that goes on with, say, an ex-Mormon group. You have this hardcore ideology that begins to enter and take over, and a number of people are like, I've had enough of this. And so they faction off. And so a number of them have followed my podcast and see what I'm saying, and they still identify to a degree, many of them, as kind of a cultural Mormon, if you will. But they're tired of saying the ex-Mormon world gets swallowed up in identity politics and in critical social justice. And so that was a very interesting meeting. Really, really good people, good guys. And that was kind of fun. Lastly, of course, I was able to meet with my 2 kids and other family members. And so that was nice. We went and had I was surprised, some pretty good sushi in downtown Provo on Friday night. And I was there with my son and my daughter and her boyfriend. And then the next morning, we went to a restaurant in Provo called The Block and had an amazing breakfast. 2 eggs over easy, only way to do it, several strips of bacon, and a massive plate of French toast. So that was kind of nice. Really good food there at The Block. Incidentally, just backing up here to finish off and talk about the Bybee episode, I must have had a dozen people, which tells you there's a much, much larger number, right? A dozen people that came to me before I ever did the episode and said, did you leave a voicemail on that professor's phone? Right? He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was talking about. It got perpetuated out there. There is a large swath of people that are always going to think that was me, that I did that. And so I had to do the episode. I feel good about doing the episode and trying to my daughter's boyfriend found out about it before I had talked to him about it. And it's like, that wasn't you. He knew it wasn't me, obviously. But he was told it was me, right? Something to that effect. Anyway, good week, solid week, a lot to come from what we did this last weekend. General conference was amazing. I'm going to be going through, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm going to take a few of the talks and expound a little bit on them with some of my thoughts. I would love to get your feedback on those talks. And then a couple of themes through this week that I found in conference that you may have seen also. And if you would comment and give me some feedback on those episodes, I would really appreciate it. I feel after general conference that I feel like I how do I say this? I stand with the brethren, and I support them, and I sustain them. I don't always agree with them. That's okay. But I sustain them in their call and in the mantle that they carry. And, you've got to do that sometimes. You've got to step up on that sometimes and stand for something. It not only is the right thing to do, but it develops more purpose for you. Not that you want to go out and be a sheriff, right? But standing up in all places, as Elder Renlund talked about with the Young Women's Theme, as witnesses of Christ, we need to do that. And when we don't and we let things go, then there are those who are going to rise up and try and beat things down and break things down and criticize with a capital C and deconstruct with a capital D. And you've got to step up. It doesn't matter. It's something I say sometimes to the faculty members. You've got to step up. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to step up and say something. And I know there's some things that are at risk. I have plenty at risk. I get hammered all the time. I try to ignore as much of that as I can. And I know there's a lot more coming. But this is too important. The gospel's true. The gospel's true. And the church is true. And we are members of that church. And we're not just observers. We are participants in the kingdom of God. And I think it's important that we stand up. So thanks for listening.